Alternate Realities has been gone for over 5 years, but our community lasts forever. And now, in these dark times, the AR signal lights up the night sky, and the old gang is ready to answer the call as we celebrate a year's worth of holidays together. This is the LongAR Halloween. Welcome to the LongAR Halloween, a My Comic Shop history tale. I am your host, Anthony Desiato. This is part 4, New Year's. And for this installment, I am joined by former Alternate Realities customer, Nofiel Hussain.
Hey, how are you? Glad to be here. It's an honor to be on the New Year's show.
Yes, you know what? We have a lot of ground to cover, but let me just say this. Are you one for New Year's resolutions? Do you make New Year's resolutions? Do you kind of buy into that or not so much?
I try. I mean, it's a new start of the year. We should all try to, I don't want to say repent, right? But, try to come up with some sort of, resolution, as you said. I try to follow that, absolutely.
Yeah. Are there any that you would share with our audience? If it's personal, you don't want to, you don't have to, but I'm just curious.
No, I mean, I guess, don't procrastinate. It's like this, what everyone usually has,
Like, don't be a flat squirrel, basically?
Yeah, exactly. Don't be a flat squirrel. Just be committed. Just if you got to do something, just do it. Things like that. But procrastination is probably the one I would say. Let's not, be committed to that. Do not procrastinate.
Yeah.
How about yourself?
I, honestly, for the most part, I really don't subscribe to making New Year's resolutions. And I don't begrudge anyone who does, and if that works for you, right on. I guess I do really try to live that, don't be a flat squirrel motto. Like I really try to put that into practice. So like when there's stuff that I want to accomplish or I want to work on, within myself, like I really try to just, not wait necessarily, for the new year. So yeah, I mean, certainly this year and in years past, I really can't think of many instances where I had a very specific, New Year's resolution where I was like, January 1, this happens. Now, do you have any like New Year's traditions or anything that you typically follow?
No. Well, the funny thing is, I have to work on New Year's Day, so the struggle is real, right? Because I work in finance, so we do a very hard year-end close. Before my wife and I got married, she had this tradition where she would go to Montauk and watch the sunrise. So basically, they would drive at like 2 a.m. on New Year's Eve, and then watch the sunrise, and that's great. But I've never been able to do that because I have to be in the office at it's later, like 10 a.m. But still. So we'll see. Maybe actually, because this year I think New Year's is on Friday or something, right? Or Saturday or something like that. So I might be able to get away with it, but we'll see. I'm old, man. I just can't. I can't do that. You remember sleep? Sleep was a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I forgot.
Yeah, as the father of a year and a half, year old kid. Yeah, we've struck a nice balance, I think, and we're in a good routine. And those like really sleep deprived nights where we were like zombies, that was really just in the very beginning, thankfully.
Okay.
So for the most part, again, there have been a few sleep regressions where it's been a little dicey, but for the most part. He's we really can't complain. So I can't say I'm so sleep deprived. Although, and again, going back to, it's not a resolution, but, I tend to stay up like really late, like too late. Like historically, I've always been a little bit of a night owl, but, especially, I guess during the pandemic where, I'm working from home. So like my work schedule is more flexible. Like I do have to be up, for Milo, but like, it's not like, okay, I have to get up so that I can get to the office. And so that I'm up to like 2, 3 in the morning. It's way too late.
Wow. I thought maybe you said midnight. I'm like, okay, that's
no.
Wow.
So that's something, not a New Year's resolution, but that's something that, we'll try to work on a little bit.
Okay. Well, I'm hoping for the best.
So, we're recording this before New Year's, but this will drop, I believe it's January 6th. So by the time people are hearing this, the holiday will have passed. We hope everyone had a good one. As far as traditions, the only real one that I followed for most of my life now is watching The Honeymooners.
Oh,
the classic.
WB11?
That's it. Well, not WB anymore, but yeah.
Oh, so I don't have cable. I'm the new generation where we don't have the cable.
Oh, did you
Disney
cut
Plus and
the?
Netflix.
Oh, so you're just all streaming services.
I'm all streaming, man. Because when I was living with my parents, basically I would be paying the dish bill. We use Dish because we get the international channels. It was like $200 a month, and I'm like, no, no, I am not doing this. So when I moved out into my own apartment, once I got married, we just basically Amazon, Netflix, Disney Plus, HBO Max. By the way, is phenomenal. They're really stepping up their game. So we're set.
Yeah, to be honest, like that was because we moved over the summer, and there was a little moment where we seriously contemplated not having cable and just relying on the streaming services. And we didn't pull the trigger on that, at least not yet.
Okay.
But it's the sort of thing that, typically, so like we have Optimum by Altice, and, typically with any of these providers, it's like usually a 2-year sign up initially, and you get a pretty good deal. And then after that 2-year mark, they really hit you.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So, I don't know. It might be the sort of thing like when that time comes, maybe we might make a switch then, in a couple of years, depending on how things, pan out over the next couple of years.
Okay.
So we'll see.
So what have you been watching that is on cable?
To be honest, and this is the funny thing, it's like most of the stuff that we're watching is on the apps. Although that's in part, I think, because with the pandemic, right? Like so many shows are not back. But I mean, like we watch This Is Us on NBC, and when the CW shows come back, like Supergirl and Riverdale and like that stuff, we'll watch that. But yeah, no, for sure. Like most of the stuff we're watching is on the apps.
Oh, nice. Man, Riverdale. I tried watching that. And my love of Archie comics, right? You know the whole story. I learned to read English because of it in Pakistan, and it has a fond place. And then I saw that scene with Archie and Miss Weatherby, and I was like, no. I couldn't do it.
Oh, Miss Grundy in the very beginning?
Sorry, that's what I meant.
Ah, yes. Where Archie's banging his teacher. They, like, right off the bat, they wanted you to know this was a very different Archie.
Yeah.
And I felt like that went a long way toward that.
That's true. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. That just shocked me. See, I even forgot her name. I was just like, oh my God. Because I remember they got married, a Grundy and what's his face? But yeah, I saw that. I'm like, this is not my childhood. I know this is, the whole reinventing thing. I don't want to be the gatekeeper. But no, I couldn't do it. I'm sorry. I hope it's a good show, and I hope you're enjoying it. What season is it on now?
It is going into its 5th season. And
wow.
It's entertaining. It's entertaining. Okay. It's really never boring. I'll give it that. So that's one of the things I actually wanted to circle back to your learning to read, through Archie and all of that. Cause I was aware of that, but I don't know that we've ever like full on discussed it. So I did want to circle back to that. But first, you and I, and we were saying this briefly before we started recording, but I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw you.
It must be at least, I want to say 2.5 years. I try to go for it's amazing that you try to set up the year-end dinners and stuff, but things always happen, It's like, life happens, everyone gets married and we have different responsibilities. And it's great that, you always set that up. I appreciate it. So I don't want you to think I'm flaking on you or anything like that, because it really is a really wonderful effort that you put through. But, I'm hoping we can meet sometime soon. Pending I have there's no issues or anything. It really is amazing. It's so coincidental. Like you would send these messages, hey, we're having dinner. I'm like, I'm going to Orlando to visit my in-laws. Or we're doing this. And I'm like, oh, I had something planned. So I swear to God, I'm not bailing on you. But it just worked out. And I would love to just see the gang again, because it's just been so darn long. Occasionally I might see, I'll talk to Steve on text, Steve Otto, our legendary SCO. We'll talk about stocks and we'll talk about things like that. Occasionally he might buy a book for me through his account. So I might go see him. It's actually a very funny story. If you want me to share, I'll share it. So I was supposed to pick up those artist editions. Those are so addictive, by the way. Once you pick one up, there's no space to put them. So he gave me a good deal. I decided to buy one. And I said, yeah, I'll come by on Saturday. And I gave him a time. And I got there in front of his door on the dot. I think I said 10:30. He looked at me and he goes, you're the reason that I have faith in humanity again. I was like, what just happened? What? He's like, I had 2 people flake out on me today. And I was like, you know what? what's the worst that could happen? And then I came in on time. And he's like, you know what? You restored my faith in humanity again. And I felt so honored that Skull was able to say that to me. Made my day.
Yeah, that's really saying something because, and I know you don't have a social media presence anymore.
No, I'm out. Yeah.
So he's been extremely vocal on Facebook about his contempt for people and his dismay over real world events over this past year plus.
Right.
So for him to say that you kind of renewed his faith a little bit, that really is that's a high compliment for sure. I would take that and hang on to that,
because he was just having a real bad day. You could tell, like, he had when Steve, he gets a little upset, he wears his emotions on his face, and he was just like, you know what, and he looked like it was a little aggressive, and I was like, oh God, what did I do? He's like, you just restored my faith in humanity. I had 2 people flake out on me, and now you came in on time, so I'm happy. I was like, oh, thank God.
Good. No,
bring that joy to him.
I'm glad to hear that. So, as far as like, not being able to make dinners and things like that, like, I certainly don't take offense. So, please don't think that. And, honestly, it's like the last time the whole gang, I know you weren't able to make it, but the rest of the gang assembled was for Rich Roney's birthday. February 2020. Like that was like the last, like I think one of all of our last outings before everything shut down. But even before that, and we've talked about this on the show, but it's like, those large gatherings really just don't happen. Didn't happen as much anymore, and often when they would happen would be like around the holiday time. So like it's not so crazy, right? That you would have family obligations and things like that at that point in time. But I was going to ask, like who you're still keeping in touch with and how. And I know you mentioned Steve, and I know are you still an active participant in the book club that San Gregorio organizes?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, it's like more like a online thing now, and we have like email chains going, which is kind of really funny. They just keep going. My hard drive is shot. Gmail, I think I need to buy more space now because of it. Because the threads will go to like 99, 100, and I'm just like, dear God. But it's a fun though. I really enjoy it because, in all honesty, I am a casual reader of comics. I mean, these guys are like intense. I am put to shame like tenfold. But the thing is that most comic book guys are really nice people, and they take pride in educating. Right? It's like, oh, like my favorite character is X. Let me tell you about them. One guy was so nice to me. They were talking about some comic book. It was a Justice League or something. And he goes, what's your Amazon account? I'm like, what? And he gifted me a digital copy of a comic book. And it was like, this guy was so passionate to share his love. He just gave me a free comic online. And I was like, oh man, you guys are so sweet. So yeah, you build, a lot of friendships with it. Do you have your own clubs that you do?
You're on it, man. This is one of the main ways, like I've really, kept in touch with people. It's like, and that's actually sort of been a bit of a theme with the LongAR Halloween, this cycle of the podcast, because I spoke to Bill Mayo and Roby and Rich Roney, and now, you're number 4. And, Rich, I talk to almost weekly. At least weekly, so we're in regular contact, but pretty much everyone else, it's, Facebook interactions, liking posts or the occasional message, sometimes a text, but that's usually the extent of it, except when we do these podcasts. And so that's one of the things that I've really loved about doing this. And, the book club is great. I know I was there for like the very beginning of it. It got to a point where I just didn't have like the weekend day, like especially when I was deep into the documentary production and all that stuff, it just really wasn't feasible. And then the baby, and then I know now it's via Zoom, which is great. I'm glad, you guys have been able to continue it. I'm doing enough of this where it's like, I just don't really have it in me to do more, but I mean, it's great. And I think that's probably in terms of like larger, and it's not just AR people, which I'm aware of. Like, I know it's definitely a mix, but I mean, I feel like that's probably the largest, like that's where the largest gathering of AR refugees occurs, like on a regular basis. I mean, I would think, I'm not aware of anything else that, has, because it's a good number of people who do it.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'll be honest, like they do a lot of the Zoom stuff. I've maybe done a handful, again, because of a busy schedule or something, because it's usually done on the weekends. And try to plan something to do. Even with COVID, you just need to get the hell out, right? Occasionally, you just have to. So I've even said it on, like, guys, I'm sorry, but we have a hiking trip plan. We need to get out before I get cabin fever and just go ballistic. So yeah, I mean, it's just tough, even with the Zoom and stuff. The conditions that we're living in right now are completely abnormal. So you have to look out for your own health and well-being.
Yeah, but I will say, actually, specifically on the book club front, I am launching a book club podcast that I think will be out the week after this episode comes out. So,
nice.
So actually a little bit of an announcement for listeners and viewers, because we do these video podcasts now too. So, it's My Comic Shop Book Club, which previously was a little bit of like a sub-series within My Comic Shop history, but it's going to be its own full-fledged, ongoing, bi-weekly podcast series. And bi-weekly, yeah. So, I do Digging for Kryptonite bi-weekly, and then My Comic Shop Book Club bi-weekly. So we'll have a new podcast every week, plus My Comic Shop history every month. So I've been podcasting a lot, but it's been, honestly, like, especially during this time, it's like, I have my wife and I have my son, and I'm working remotely, so I'm engaging a lot, that way. So it's not like I don't have interaction, but this is really like scratching an itch for me in a very different way. Right. Being able to talk about this kind of stuff, and especially to reconnect with you and the other guys from the store and all of the other people I've met, along the way doing the podcast and the documentary and stuff. So it's really been great. And I'm excited to do the book club. The first one is going to be, the first recording. I don't know if this will be the first episode I release, so don't hold me to this, but I think it's going to be All-Star Batman.
Awesome.
Do you remember All-Star Batman?
Wait, I'm the goddamn Batman.
The goddamn Batman.
Oh, okay.
You know what?
Because go ahead.
No, you go.
No, because basically we had an internal book club about really good bad books, and I actually did it on Holy Terror by Frank Miller. And I just remembered that it was like around that same time period, and just the dialogue and the use of goddamn over and over again by Miller, and it just resonated again. I was like, oh God. But anyways.
No, it's okay. Just, can you do me a quick favor? Just shift over a little bit, because we're kind of losing you. Okay, perfect. So here's the thing with All-Star Batman, and I'll say this on the book club podcast, but I'll say it here too. I haven't done my reread yet. I haven't reread it yet, so I don't know what I'm going to feel when I do that. But I was not a fan of it when I read it the first time. And do you remember Brandon Montclair, right?
Who was editor, right?
Yeah, Brandon Montclair, right? So, we knew him from Alternate Realities. He was one of the owners. Right. Then he went on to be an editor at DC, and of course now he's a full-fledged comic book writer. But at the time, he was working with Bob Schreck in the Bat Office and on the All-Star line. And so he was the assistant editor on these All-Star books, Batman and Superman. And I remember, like, when he would come around, we were all bagging on All-Star Batman for the goddamn Batman and, all that stuff. And I remember, like, he was such a proponent of it. And, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think, like, the gist of it was, like, you guys don't get it. Like, it's a masterpiece and you guys don't get it. And I was always like, I really don't think so. But it's always kind of stuck in the back of my head. And now I'm like, okay, I just think it would be interesting, especially for a book club discussion, to revisit it and see, like, going in knowing what it is and what it's not, could I find a way to enjoy it? Like, is there actually something there that is worthwhile, that is an interesting and entertaining story? So tune into My Comic Shop Book Club to find out.
Was it ever finished? I don't even remember. I got the first volume.
No, unfinished.
Oh, lovely. Great.
Unfinished. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that it, because, it's funny. I don't know if I even ever finished the entire thing, but they did 10 issues, and I don't think that the 10th issue ended on a major cliffhanger, but it definitely was not resolved. They always intended to do more and never did.
Oh, well, it had that really badass Joker, maybe because I was young when I read it, the Joker issue. I was like, oh my God, this Joker is I've never seen someone so violent before, or things like that. So that was kind of the cool thing, but I think I'm scared if I reread it again, I think it's not going to resonate well. The hipster in me would probably have vanished away, so I could probably look at it from a more objective perspective. Oh, Miller.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to revisit it, but I was obviously, I was reflecting on you and our friendship in advance of this, and like one of the things because I met you in the context of, me working at Alternate Realities, and you were one of the customers there and part of the gang, and, came out to dinner and all
Mhm.
that. Though I can't, for the life of me, I can't remember our first meeting.
Okay, I actually have really weird good memories. I remember your meeting you for the first time. It was you of course every time you come into the store you had your Celica and you were always excited to talk about it. I know comics. And I remember I accidentally referred for the Ultimates writer, and I think I did not say it was Millar, it was someone else. And you were standing on the side and you're like, actually it was Millar that wrote that. I still remember that. And I was like, who's this kid? But that was the first time I remember my interaction with you for the first time. It was this immense giddiness and excitement. And you were like, actually, Millar wrote that. I was like, okay, got it.
That was also when we were all mispronouncing Mark Miller,
Yeah.
and making it a lot more exotic. Yeah.
I spoke to a guy who's actually Scottish, and I said, "How do you pronounce it?" He goes, "It's actually like Millar, like with a little R's roll." And I'm like, "Okay, so I'll just say Miller, Millar. What do you want me to say?" He goes, "Whatever, just say whatever you want." I'm like, "Okay."
You know what's so funny? Because in the Christmas episode, I had Rich Roney on, and we talked about our first meeting, Christmas 2002 at the store, and he was going to buy
Excuse me.
JLA Spectre Soul War, and I had
Okay.
read a review of it. And literally in our first meeting, he's a fully grown adult, lifelong comic book fan. Here I am, 15-year-old kid, 16,
Mhm.
and I was like, "Oh, I don't think you want to get that. I read a review. It's not, it's not very good."
Oh no.
But the thing is, he flipped through it at the store, and he didn't like what he saw, and that I think really curried me a lot of favor with Rich Roney, because he still talks about it 2 decades later. So it worked out. And then we have this instance here with you, because it's like, I don't, especially then, like in those high school days, I mean, I was a lot more shy. I mean, I don't think I'm really shy now, but at the time, so like this, the fact, like all of these first meetings are like me being like, "Hey, it's kind of funny."
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think that you were in any way shy. Like you had like this really ecstatic personality, and you had a passion for it. I don't know if it was. I mean, you were a fan since the death of Superman, but yeah, you would be in there and you would just be talking and talking and talking and talking. Not in a bad way, but just excitement of talking. And I accidentally said the wrong thing, and boom, you were right there for the correction, politely. Obviously, there was nothing.
Right.
You weren't aggressive or anything. So yeah, I mean, I would say that would definitely be the first memory I have of you.
Very interesting. I mean, it's fascinating to do this, and to, because I don't have that specific memory, and it's like, it doesn't sound like me, but clearly it is. But, I was thinking about, again, about you generally in our friendship. And like, one of the things that always stands out to me, and kind of building on what we were just talking about with book club, is, I know you said I was enthusiastic, but I always sense a lot of enthusiasm for you to explore new stuff. I mean, you were, you had such and I think I maybe still do, like, such a strong interest to, read and discover new stories. And I remember, like, you would always, because not just myself, but all of us, like, we would make recommendations and stuff. And you, man, you took them. Like, I remember you coming up with like stacks of trade paperbacks, based on stuff we had recommended. And so that always stood out, like, just, how, excited you were about comics, and just like open to recommendations, and just open. Because again, you don't always get that with comic book fans.
Right.
But
it was because you and Sean, you guys were giving such great recommendation. Like, growing up, I would always be standard, as I said, Archie or like Superman and stuff. And then Sean would be like, "Hey, read Preacher." And I would read it, and I'm like, "What is this? This is completely new. Like, this guy has the voice of God, and he told someone to go F himself, and he actually did it." And I'm like, "What is this?" And like, you guys just, you guys gave phenomenal recommendations, and that's why I kept coming and I kept giving the business. So kudos to both you and Sean for having such great taste.
yeah, no, well, that's very nice. And again, like, it was our pleasure to do it. It wasn't, it wasn't work. I mean, like, we, as much as we were behind the counter or whatever, I mean, that was, something that I think we were just always happy to do. And especially, again, like, to have a receptive audience, that was really cool. I mean, do you still, I guess maybe the answer is yes, since you do the book club, but I mean, do you still kind of have that, like, thirst for comics to, to kind of try new stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, in my opinion, the best comic book I've read in maybe the past 2-3 years is the Flintstones book. Did you read that?
No, but I know of it. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I mean, it was mind blowing to me. It was like, this is phenomenal because it's just a great story with pictures. I mean, there's no superheroes involved, but I mean, I was completely blown away about it. And I mean, as I said, Vision. I know a lot of people, Tom King, etc. But there's certain lines in Vision that are just like, because you look at it from perspective of this cold robot that has a life, but it's not really life, and he's so blunt because he doesn't understand, like, being kind, like being sensitive to people's needs. They just tell you for what it is. It's, to me, that, like, those types of things. I like something new and refreshing. I mean, same thing with Walking Dead trades. There's no page breaks. Once you buy a trade, you just have to read the whole thing, or else you can't stop. So I just just tell a good story. That's what it comes down to. I mean, I'm not seeing a lot in terms of like superhero genre wise, but at the end of the day, it's words with pictures and tell a good story, and that's what I've always been into.
Yeah, right.
But
on.
Flintstones, I highly recommend Flintstones. It's like life changing. It's like, it's so different in a good way.
All right, that's I mean, life changing that's very very high praise.
In the sense that it like Flintstones. Remember, like, the cartoon? It was like, that's a cute show, but it puts such a humanist approach to it, and you realize that these characters are so much more intelligent. You're like, oh, it's from back in the prehistoric, but it's so intelligent. Okay, life changing might be a little strong, but give it a go.
Well, it all kind of ties together because I mentioned my New Year's tradition of watching Honeymooners. The Flintstones are based on the Honeymooners.
Oh,
it's the same template. So Ralph and Ed are Fred and Barney, and the wives are. So I don't know. Maybe the deal should be you watch some Honeymooners. I'll read some Flintstones.
I'll try. I'll give it a go.
Listen, we got to take a real quick commercial break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about some again how you got into comics, and we'll do some alternate realities talk because people love it.
Sounds good.
We'll be right back. Submissions are now open for the March season of the Brightside Tavern Film Festival in Jersey City, New Jersey. Visit filmfreeway.com to submit your film now. Also, be sure to listen to the podcasts hosted by the festival's organizer, CJ Cullen. You can find the official Hang On to Your Shorts podcast, as well as the Cullen on Film podcast, via a shared universe network. The Hive Comics and Games is an oasis of nerd fun and events in the heart of Odessa, Texas. Whether it's comic book superhero stories or role-playing in a dungeon, the Hive is where to be. Come tap your mana and face off against the top Magic the Gathering players in West Texas. Hive carries a majority of new comic titles each Wednesday and has all of your favorite titles in their back issue section. Follow them on Facebook at The Hive Comics and on Instagram at The Hive Comic Shop. All right, and we're back. Phil, by any chance, do you happen to have headphones handy? Because I'm hearing a little bit of echo. Like when I'm talking, I'm hearing it a little bit on your end.
I do not know. They might not be spiffy enough. I'm old school, man. If I don't have social media, I don't even have, I have the plug-in ones. So I'm sorry. That's
okay. I mean, are they? We're still recording. I could have hit pause, but you know what? It's the pandemic. It is what it is. But do you? I mean, are they handy enough where you could a little bit? I don't know. Listeners might not be able to hear it. I'm picking it up a little bit in my headphones. Like if they're right there and you can plug them in, I would say do. But if not, don't sweat it.
Okay, in the other room.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. Actually, before anything else, because I don't want to forget. I want to publicly thank you for the photos that you sent me.
Yes, a year too late. I'm sorry.
They got into the final cut. They're in the final cut of the movie. So, did you watch the movie? You did. But you watched the Kickstarter cut, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you haven't seen the final cut with your photos in it.
No, I have not.
Okay.
Actually, wait, let me think about it. Which one? I think when you released it officially on Vimeo, that's the one I saw.
Okay, so that's the cut that went out to the Kickstarter backers who pledged at that level. So hey, I thank you for that, of course. But also, you took photos of the dismantling, the sign coming down on the final night of alternate realities. And you had posted them on Facebook, but then you deleted your Facebook account.
Right.
And I had asked you for the photos, and you were trying to find them. And you weren't able to find them by the time I did that first cut, but you were able to procure them, and I got them in. And it was like, I should have double checked the timing on this because I think it was like real close to when I locked the movie and sent it to my distributor. Like it was real close. but it made, I really think it made a big difference because it brought to life what Bill was describing on camera. He was talking about the sign coming down, and now we had the visuals to show that. So that helped a lot. But
Right.
also, spoiler alert, but the movie ends with me in front of the AR sign at Oto's garage.
Yes.
And so having more of that imagery earlier in the movie, like really, I think really tied everything together very
I'm
nicely. So
glad.
what did you have to go through to get those photos back?
Okay, so basically, I try to be organized, but I was a little disorganized with this. And with Gmail, I sent the pictures to myself. So once it was done in Facebook, I actually had copies of it in my Gmail. Only problem was I did not know what the subject line was. So I did AR, nothing. Altered realities, nothing. Closing, nothing. So I actually just buckled down and I just filtered by pictures, JPEG, and I started from the bottom and just started scrolling all the way up. And praise the Lord, I found it. I was like, oh, thank God. So that was my strategy. That's the only way I could have done it. I was like, I have to do this. I
Because
had them. Like when you have something and it's just annoying you at this point. So that's what I had to do. I just had to go and look for it.
Because I remember emailing me, and because I think you thought, or maybe you did, that you had them on an old phone, but you didn't have the password, and you were like one
Yes.
attempt away from the phone
Yes, it was a
self-destructing.
BlackBerry. It was a BlackBerry, and Blackberries are dead. And the problem is that my IT guys, since we don't handle Blackberries, they said we can't reopen your phone, so you're screwed. So I had 10 options, and I think I still have the phone. So if I charge the phone and turn it on, it still shows 9 by 10 for my password. So I was just heartbroken because I was like, I don't remember my password. What the hell? I have gone through 4 phones after that. So I was very sad and disappointed, but then I was like, it doesn't make sense. I'm too meticulous to not keep a record of it. And then lo and behold, through Gmail, thank God I had it. So it's very happy.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, again, it helped a lot, and so I really appreciate the effort. I'm glad you were there and you took the photos, and I appreciate you, being so diligent to track them down. It's funny, and I've talked about this, but I wasn't there that final night of the store. Funny enough, so Gavin DeGraw, the singer, is one of my wife and I, like, he's our favorite artist, and we've seen him a bunch of times now, almost annually, before Baby and Pandemic. We would go at least once a year. And we actually had, for our engagement party, friends of ours got us tickets to see him at Madison Square Garden on June 30th, the last day of Alternate Realities. And so that's where we were that night. But
Okay.
Steph and I went to the store that afternoon on our lunch break from work, just for a final visit. And again, this has been discussed on the podcast. I think, especially, I know Rich spoke about it too, but it really didn't look or feel like the store at that point, and that the Friday before was the day that Bill and I hauled out all those boxes, and then Steve, Bill, and I recorded the season 1 finale of My Comic Shop History, and that was that day and night were really special from a personal level,
Right.
as far as Alternate Realities and those guys, and when I came back the next day, that day you and like a ton of other people had been there, like tearing down the slat wall and like taking out so much
That
stuff.
was so memorable.
But I remember when I went in, and I know Rich had the same experience when he came in a few minutes later, like at that point, by Saturday evening, before we had our last supper, that huge dinner, like it didn't look like the store anymore. And then when we went there that Tuesday, that final day of the store during lunch, like it just, I mean, I'm glad I went and I got to see Steve and Bill. Like, I'm glad I went, but it didn't, I felt like I had kind of already said goodbye, so
Right.
as much as it would have been nice to be there on that night
Right.
when the sign came down, again, I felt like I had kind of, again, had that farewell. But what was it like for you being there?
It was, I mean, it's like I think a lot of us can say that when we got our driver's license. Was that the first place you went to when you got your driver's license?
100% the first place I drove. No exaggeration.
Same here. I got my driver's license. I got into my Honda Civic. I drove up and I said, this is the first. I went to Steve and I said, you're the first place I've gone to with my license. So it feels like it's a real place where people go when they get their license. It's like the most tangible thing. It's like a magnetic field. It just pulls you in. So, yeah, I mean, as I recall, I still remember it was so vivid because he put the sign up, like, the store is closing, and you had all these people show up. And they know the store is closed, but they just came to say goodbye to him. They took pictures with Steve. And, okay, this is actually, I hope I don't choke up. So what happened was, people were saying goodbye and stuff. It was actually Ramadan, so I couldn't stay for the dinner afterwards. So I basically, when we were saying goodbye, I gave Steve a hug, and he said to me, whispered in my ears, "Thank you for everything." And I was like, "Oh, please don't cry, please don't cry, please don't cry." And that really like meant so much to me because I was on his gunny sack for a bit because I had ordered books when I was in my youth and I did not pick them up, and he did take away my discounts. And
Oh.
I was on that list, and I felt really bad about it. I was young, I was stupid. I didn't realize consequences of financial consequences that can happen. So I still held on to that. I felt really bad, and when he said that, thanks for your help and thanks for everything, I felt so like relieved, like I had been absolved of my sins. So that has a very special place for me. I still very vividly remember that, and I don't think I'll ever forget that. It meant a lot to me.
No, I'm sure that's a really nice moment. And, it's funny though, because I think, a lot of people, even within the core group, ran afoul of Steve at some point. I mean, in the first documentary I did, I have San Gregorio on screen talking about how Steve canceled his file because he didn't pick up books.
Yeah.
Doug Desher for years was known as the worst offender in the store history. And
Right.
I think we must have talked about this at some point on the podcast, but in case we didn't, a standout moment of the Last Supper, the big dinner, the final Saturday of the store, was Steve pardoning.
Yes. Call that. That was great.
And Jason Medina, one of the customers who helped out that day, and he came to the dinner. He took a ton of photos, and they're in the documentary too. You guys that was clutch, because during those final weeks and months of the store, it's like I was doing the podcast. That was my way of documenting this, but I wasn't like taking photos or video and stuff. So that was huge. But there's this great photo of Doug, like with arms in the air, triumphant, as Steve finally absolved him of that. But, so like there were a lot of instances of that. But I'm glad that, you could have that moment, and,
I got my closure.
Yeah.
So happy.
No, for sure. And, you mentioned, we'll circle back to AR, but, you mentioned Ramadan. And, that's another thing when I was thinking about you, things that have kind of stood out. There have been a lot of dinners I remember over the years where you would come, but it was during Ramadan and you were fasting, but you would still come and you would just get water and sit around the rest of us while the willpower to do that is commendable. No, seriously.
I appreciate it, but, we've been doing it for so long, as just Muslims in general, that, we're conditioned. We started around like 8 to 10 years old. You start slowly on it, obviously. You don't do the full 30 days, but after a while, it's like, there's weaknesses. Everyone's got a certain weakness. For me, it's French fries. So if I smell French fries, I'm like, no. But otherwise, I'm good, man. I mean, at the end of the day, it's usually water that tends to get you. But if you're not exerting yourself, you're fine. And just being around friends, it's like family. So it never bothered me. I got the love. I feed off the love. That's all that matters. We're
almost in SCO territory, because SCO claims that he feeds himself mentally. I don't know if you remember that Odoism.
Oh, yes. I forgot. What number was that?
I don't know. 37.
Okay. Fair enough.
But well, you say it's funny because French fries, but like we would often go to Mickey Spillane's, and I feel like most people probably had French fries.
They did, yeah. It was just God testing me at that point, so it's okay.
With Ramadan, it's 30 days. Is it you fast for portions of the day? Or how does
sunrise to sunset.
Okay.
The good news is that when we were doing it, when I was doing it, when AR was around, so it gets pushed back 10 days every year. So right nowadays, it's like in the heart of summer. So the days are a little bit longer, like 12 to 14 days of sunrise. But back in the day, it was like around winter time. So it was casual, man. There's nothing. It's 8-hour days? Nothing.
Well, listen, I still give you credit. It's funny. You don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, but I was kind of curious because, I was raised Catholic and I went to Catholic school pre-K through college. But at this point in my life, I'm not a practicing Catholic. And even when I was, it's like, not eating meat on Fridays or things like that. I never followed that. I always rejected that. And, these days, I very much still, I think, follow and definitely appreciate the morals, the lessons, the stories of the Bible and of Jesus that I learned. But again, I'm not an active practitioner of my faith the way it seems like you are. And I guess I was just kind of curious, like, is it just I guess what's driving you? Like, is it that it's just so it's such a part of your life and routine? Is it like family pressure? Is it like genuine belief? Like some mix of all of that?
It's yeah, and it's also like a challenge, right? Like people have been doing this for thousands of years, and they've done it in the desert for God's sakes. I'm in an air conditioned room. What am I complaining about, right? So it's like it's for me. It's just I know I have some friends that I know people that are Muslims that don't they don't adhere to all the principles. Like they might drink, they might do whatever, but when it comes to Ramadan, they are all buckled down, and they will they all do it because it's like we look at it as a challenge. It's like a lot of people think it's like, oh my God, how do you do it? But it's like, we're like, we accept it as that. It's a part of a struggle, and you kind of, work through it. Even in like a lot of Christianity faiths, fasting is kind of something that clears your mind. And, the whole intermittent fasting and all that stuff, everyone's on that. Like they're doing a modified version of Ramadan at this point. So everyone's doing the club.
That's true. No, that's true. But no, I always admired that. And
Thank you.
I have your actual name up on the screen there.
Yes, I see that.
The way, again, I don't remember our first meeting. I definitely know that I'm sure you were introduced to me as Phil Insane,
Probably.
which was
Yes.
where did that where did that come from, and what was behind that?
I think it was Mike Mayo, Bill's brother.
Okay.
He's probably the one that said Phil Insane. And then like my pullout sheet had it Insane, and then like anything that was kept for me, like hardcovers, it just had Phil Insane. So just roll with the punches at this point. I was like, oh, it is what it is.
Yeah, I guess the rhyming aspect that we went Hussein Insane. I mean, was that like
Exactly.
the idea?
Absolutely. Insane in the Membrane. I've heard them all. It's, Hussein in the Membrane.
It's
We were
fun.
kids.
It's funny because like there's the only thing that I would say maybe is a little insane about you is the original art collecting, the lengths to which you've gone for art. And oh man, it's so funny because I was thinking about this too. You've been on the show 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
You've been on the show, My Comic Shop History, 3 times. But the first time was in season 1 when we did our comic shop business school. So it was very focused on that. And then you were on the show twice in season 2. The first was the original art episode, which to this day is one of our highest rated episodes. People love that like how to original art thing. And then we did a book club episode on New Frontier.
Right.
So like despite the fact that you've been on 3 times, like every time you've been on, there's been like a different like it hasn't been AR centric. So I was kind of curious, like how you even came to AR in the first place, and how you became part of the crew.
The joining of like the family aspect, I would have to credit you and Sean for that because, well, the first thing is I actually lived across the street from 1F by Cards, 2F by Comics, like literally next door. And I would go there all the time. And then when we started going to school in Edgemont, I would sometimes walk down, like I would walk home, which was a pretty long walk now that I think about it. And I would see, oh, comic book store. And I would just like a moth to a fire, I'll just go there. And I've looked at the store and I'm like, this is what a store is supposed to be. They had the X-Men pinball arcade machine, I believe, or was it pinball? I forgot. I mean, they had all these things. And I'm like, wow, this is what a store is supposed to be. So I was going back when, Steve was running it and Tom Doherty, I believe that's his last name. He was running the store. So I'm like old school. The first time I met Drew, it's actually kind of funny. I was supposed to get a cab to pick me up and the cab never came. And Drew, complete stranger, is like, hey, I'll give you a ride home. And now that I think about it, I was like, 14-year-old kid getting a ride from a stranger home is probably not a good idea. But, we all know how generous Drew is as a person. So you can kind of, I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, I was going back in the day, and then, I stopped collecting for a little bit because comics just got a little too saturated. I can actually tell you I think I've spoken about this. The comic book that got me out of comics was Batman Darkness, the Top Cow DC book.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that was literally, I remember that. I read it. I'm like, okay, Sylvester did like 3 pages of this. The rest is just filler artists. I was like, all right, I'm done with comics. And then I had a reemergence with Steve Otto said to read Superman Red Sun. And he was so passionate about it, he reinstated my discount. He's like, this book is so great. I'll give you the discount. Just read it. And that really sparked my second coming of reading comics. And then you guys came into the picture, and, from there on, it's history.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. Like, we've discuss this about how Steve, really lost the passion for comics. And I think that was,
Mhm.
definitely played a role in him ultimately closing the store. But it's like every now and then he would read and really get behind something. Like I remember
Yeah.
JLA The Nail was a big
Okay.
one that he really liked. He was really into We Three, the Grant
Mm.
Morrison Vertigo book about the cybernetic dogs. So like
Yes.
every now and then there would be something, and it's like, you know, if Steve said like you really need to read this, it was like wow, like
Yeah.
it must be something for this guy to like spring into action because it was so out of the norm.
Right. And then because he was like, you just got to read those two, those 2 pages, right? The famous 2 pages. And when you read it, it's like, did your life finally feel complete when you read it? And I was like, you know what? There was this enlightenment period. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's like, yes, it felt like your life had come to a complete close. I was like, yeah, no, that sounds about right. So yeah, I mean, just that passion was the reason I got back into comics. And then I would, occasionally come in, and I didn't know you guys too well back then, but I would say, hey, what do you guys recommend? And then Sean would be like, you got to read Starman. He's like, you got to get the omnibus. So I have all the omnibuses for that. I was going through a Jeff Loeb kick, and you really helped me with a lot of those books, the Preacher books, and DC. I mean, you guys were pretty much the reason I read DC. Otherwise, I was just a Marvel fiend.
It's funny with Loeb because I did. Yeah, and I don't know if you've had a chance to check out the Superman show, but I think you might enjoy it. But I did two like supersized, no pun intended, episodes
Mhm.
on the Jeff Loeb era of the Superman books,
Okay.
and that was so much fun to revisit. And I'm planning an episode in the new year on his Superman Batman run with Ed McGuinness
Right.
and Michael Turner and Carlos Pacheco.
Pacheco.
And I'm also mapping out new episodes of this book club podcast that I'm starting up. And I don't know exactly what order. Like I'll space them out, but like some of the first things that I put on my list were Batman Hush, Batman Long Halloween, the Color series that he did with Tim Sale for Marvel.
Right.
Daredevil Yellow and Spider-Man Blue and all that. And I was like, there's a lot of Loeb stuff. So
Right.
there's a lot that he wrote, especially during that period of time, that I really dug a lot. And I'm glad that we were able to share that and that you
Yeah,
enjoyed.
absolutely. No, because I went through a huge Loeb kick, and I was like, Anthony, what do you recommend? And I was like, well, you can read Spider-Man Blue, got it. Hulk Gray, got it. I mean, Daredevil Yellow, I got it all.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's still good. I should probably revisit those.
I'll let you know. I'm
Yeah.
curious about that myself. It's hilarious though when you talk about Drew giving you a ride home because Roby and I had this exact exchange when he was on the show a couple of months ago because he's gotten back into magic a little bit out in
Okay.
Seattle where he is, and he talked about like playing magic again in stores. I mean, not now during COVID, but before that. And he said
Right.
he's like like I think to myself, because like now he's playing Magic, I guess, like with kids who were the same age he was when he was playing,
Right.
and he's like, it was like I wouldn't like, he's like, I have to be very like I wouldn't give any of them a ride or or anything
Yeah.
like that. And it's like I mean, it's really true. I mean, thankfully, again, it was a wonderful group of people and everything was on the up and up. But it's like kind of on paper, and when you look back at it, it's like like that could have been
Yeah.
bad.
Because he was like, all right, come on. I'm like, what? He's like, come on, I'll give you a ride. I'm like, okay, thanks. He just come. He would drop me on Central Avenue in his Jeep Wrangler. I was like, okay.
Yeah, and I hope you don't mind me asking. I'm just kind of curious because, obviously in the world today, right? There's this a real powerful moment of racial reckoning and awareness that we haven't had before. And I guess like I've been more reflective on my own experiences, and like I think about the alternate realities group, and it's like it's a pretty like white male group generally,
Right.
like pretty homogenous. Like obviously Steve is of Japanese descent. Tom is half Thai. And I'm so sorry if I'm forgetting anybody, but like that's kind of it. And so obviously you brought a whole other background and perspective. I mean, the fact that you were the only one in our group like that, was that ever anything that like weighed on you, played any role or anything like that?
No, not at all. I
No.
mean, I know some people use that term. I'm colorblind. I don't see it. No, I mean, we all see our colors. You shouldn't be colorblind. You just recognize it exists, but it means nothing. It doesn't stand for anything. I mean, what brought us together wasn't skin color. It was our passion for something, right?
Sure.
So that's the only reason. I
Yeah.
mean, we even joke about it all the time. I mean, geez, people make fun of my last name. I mean, I'm not offended by it. So it's like, it's in good fun. There's nothing that's done out of your intentions are not bad or anything. But yeah, it's comic book that brought us together. Skin color meant nothing to me.
Yeah.
Or anyone at that point, right?
Yeah, for sure. No, I was just kind of curious about that. And because, I have been, one thing I've been thinking about more in recent years is about the whole idea of representation specifically, in comics and movies and TV and stuff. And, one of the, I had a conversation with, and on the podcast, it was in season 3 when I went to Amalgam Comics and Coffee House in Philadelphia. And, I had a conversation with Ariel Johnson, who's the owner of the store, and she's the first Black woman to own a comic shop on the East Coast, and
Wow.
she's gotten a lot of press for that. And she's in the documentary and all that. And,
Yes.
But, we did the podcast interview, and, she spoke a lot about how important the character Storm was to her when she was growing up. And the fact that, as a little Black girl, like there was no one else in comics that she read where she was like, I see myself in this character, and except for Storm, and it meant so much to her. And that really landed with me because it, again, just reflecting, I'm like, you know what, I've never had to think about that. I've never said like, oh, this character's like me, because most of the characters, especially in comics, are straight white men. And so it's like, I never had that. And so I really kind of came to appreciate that on a new level. And, like I know, for example, DC, right, with their Green Lanterns title in recent years, right? The Muslim Green Lanterns. I mean, I don't know, like, what was your take on that? Did you feel like this is great, like this is greater representation, I see myself in these characters? Did it feel like pandering? How did you feel about it?
So DC, I felt like, my opinion, no one else's.
Sure.
Definitely DC felt a little pandering, but Miss Marvel was on point. That one, because Sana Amanat, the editor on that book, had a lot of input, and the references, culture references, everything flowed, and it was relevant and it made sense. Nothing felt forced with that one. So the Green Lantern one, unfortunately, like it turned into a little bit of a joke, because it's like, okay, he's got a gun. All right, that makes no sense. And it involves like terrorism and things like that. Like his brother, someone was involved. It's like, no, that's not what it is. You need to just focus on the person. And Miss Marvel was spot on. Like I actually have like the first 24 issues of that run, and I don't read individual comics. I actually have hard copies. I would give it to my wife to read when we were going out, and because it had all these great references. If you're Pakistani, you're South Asian, you would get them. So it was all these things, and it felt natural when I read Captain Miss Marvel versus Green Lantern, which was like, I don't get it. Like it just didn't click. It didn't feel like it was natural. So kudos to Marvel on that. I'll give them that.
That's fascinating to hear. And you're the person to ask, right? Because the perspective that you have is certainly different than what I have, and there's stuff that I wouldn't pick up on. I'll be honest, I have not read either one. I actually do have the first Ms. Marvel trade. It's sadly sitting on the shelf with like a lot of other stuff that I haven't gotten to yet, but that I might now, thanks to the book club podcast.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is it's actually on Amazon Prime digital reading too. So Marvel's been pretty good about that. So you can actually read the first trade digitally if you don't want to pick up the trade. Excuse me.
How are you reading? So, that's actually one thing that I guess I'm not curious, because you've already spoken about being part of book club. So, obviously you're still reading comics, but like, are you? Because with the book club, I know, I don't know if someone puts forth a suggestion, you guys vote, however it is, but titles are selected. But are you reading stuff like outside of book club? Are you still following what's going on, or is your reading primarily what you're doing for book club?
It's primarily what what we kind of suggest with each other. These guys are like, most of the guys in the club are like hardcore Wednesday warriors. So, there's a lot of passion that goes through, and I'm still a trade guy. So I have the patience to wait for the trades. But I have transitioned to digital. I was anti-digital for the longest time. And then, my God, it's so convenient, dude. It is just too easy. Like, it's just, and of course the guide is the greatest thing, because I think the one problem with comic books in general is that your eye wanders. So you kind of spoil yourself if you turn a page. So I'm a nerd like this, but I tend to use my hand and I cover. So when I turn a page, and I use that as a make sure that I don't read what's going on. But with this app thing, it's great. You just tap, it kind of shows you exactly where you got to go.
Oh, so you use the guided view where they take you like panel by panel.
Yes,
okay.
I love that.
I can't bring myself to use it. No, I feel like I get what you're saying, and I don't begrudge your use of it or
No, of
anyone's
course.
use of it. I don't know. I feel like it's I don't want to say cheating, but it's like, I guess so. I will say, and I've said this on the show, as is not a revelation, but I too have become a reader of digital comics more so than I ever thought I would be. And it's like, I do a show called My Comic Shop History. Like, my heart is always with the stores. And,
Right.
I encourage everyone, support your local
Yes.
comic shop and all of that. But mostly as a function of space, it just got to the point where, the digital makes sense. And I think one thing that like held me back for a long time was just I wanted to replicate the experience as much as possible as reading the physical book. So I ended up getting like the biggest iPad Pro that they have. And like that basically is the same size, maybe even a little bit bigger as the actual, comic book page. And then I felt like, okay, like I have the same dimensions that I'm working with. And they really, I mean, the pages look really sharp and crisp and bright on the screen.
Right.
But I don't use the guided view because I feel like this way I'm looking at it the same way I would. But I get what you're saying. Like, it makes sense.
Yeah, for me personally, I felt like that was the one flaw with tangible comics. I mean, all through history of the publication was that if the editor or the page layout wasn't right, you would kind of spoil things for yourself. And I'm like a diehard nerd when it comes to spoilers, so I literally use my hand to mask the following panels until I know what's going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love the guided view, but to each their own.
But in My Comic Shop Country, and I interviewed Mark Waid, and he had a really important point that, as we're, in the movie we explore like why, the comic book movies are so popular, but you don't always see that translate to comics readers. And he made the point that like, reading comics, like it's a whole other language. And if you don't grow up reading comics, it's not as intuitive and natural as you might expect. Like if you hand an adult a comic, they've never looked at a comic before. And it's like, it might not be so intuitive, like exactly how to follow the story and the action.
Right.
But something like guided view, I think, solves that.
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially, the problem a lot of times with trades is the double page. Because if the panels, like if the stitching is wrong and the panel looks a little off, you don't know if you're reading a double page or you're reading a single page.
Yeah.
Worst feeling on the planet.
So what do you have like Marvel Unlimited and DC Universe, or what do you?
No, I just through the Kindle app. I just just buy them directly through Amazon, get it downloaded on the iPad, and just dig it from there.
All right. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you've again, like you and I have not. I mean, we'll exchange the occasional text, but we have really not. Certainly had a full-on conversation in a long time, and so it's great to see you, and I'm glad that you're still into comics. That's great. You're still collecting art.
So I've become more conservative. I feel like I only splurge on New York Comic Con. That is the only time.
Okay.
That's it, because I can't do it's addictive, man. I feel like, like people talk about social media and having that dopamine burst. It's the same with, I think, like comic art collecting. You want to get that recognition by putting it on Comic Art Fans and all this stuff and just get validation. And I was like, all right, I got to stop with this. So I have, last year was phenomenal for me at New York Comic Con. I'll be more than glad to show you some art, even now or whenever you want. But you know what? You want 1 second? You want to show you something?
Sure.
Yeah, I actually have something. Hopefully it'll translate well.
While you get that, I'll just plug, if anyone has not listened to the season 2, episode 2 of My Comic Shop History, the deal of the art, I hope you check it out.
Nope, not yet. I hit this dyslexic phone.
Wow.
It's not Rabik Thor commission that I had gotten.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Thank you. It's my pride and joy. I got it, and I looked at it. I'm like, why did you just give me a cover? Like, no, that's a commission. I was like, okay. Again, that's the whole mantra, right? You get an artist, you try to get what they're good at. You don't try to see, let's try something with them, because nowadays prices are so darn high, you can't take that chance. You have to go with the tried and true. So it's funny, San Gregorio said something really funny. He bought a lot of art too in New York Comic Con. He goes, my happiness is directly correlated with how much money I spend at New York Comic Con. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. That's exactly how it works. So yeah, it was a lot of fun last year. Did you go last year?
No.
Okay.
The last Steph and I went in 2017. Yeah, 2017. Okay. Yeah, our first year anniversary. Literally that day we went to Comic Con. So So that's it though. I haven't gone since. But I was curious because it's like, again, I know how into the art you've been, and I figure like, because again, it's been, I think 4 years since we did that episode, and it's like, I can't, it just seems like it's so hard to sustain, from just the time and effort and the financial component, space, like all that stuff. How does your wife feel about it?
Okay, so I got a really funny story. So, she was like, okay, it's cute. Sometimes you spend a little bit too much money. Like sometimes I'd tell her the numbers, and I would tell her the real numbers. I would not lie to her. So, somewhere in a couple of $1,000s, and she was like, geez Louise. When I showed her the Thor, that Thor was, I'll be honest, it was $1,200. But she was like, well, that seems like it seems like a good value for your money. And then last year or 2 years ago, I had a guy email me. This is a funny story. And he said, I like your, I'm a huge Pitt fan, Dale Keown fan. And I own this double page splash. And he's like, how much do you want? I threw a really stupid high number. And he goes, that's really pricey, but I have a friend who might be interested. Can he contact you? I was like, this is really weird. I'm like, yeah, sure. Wait half an hour. An email comes in my inbox. I look at it. I'm like, Robert Kirkman. That's interesting. Oh, yeah, and he emails me. He goes, hey, I heard you got Pitt pages. I'm your man. I'm like, okay, this is the number. He goes, done. I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm committed now. And then I told my wife the number, and she goes, I guess this isn't a stupid hobby, is it? I'm like, yeah, it's not. But that was a really funny story. Just the fact that my inbox comes in and it says Robert Kirkman. I'm like, this doesn't look right at all. This is a fake. I click on it. I'm like, oh, wow, that's really him. So that was so once that happened, you find out that it is an investment.
That's amazing. Listen, Walking Dead has been very successful. I'm not surprised he can throw money around on art. That's so cool. I mean, like that must be very validating for both you and your wife, right? Because it's like, you get the art for a number of reasons, right? I mean, you enjoy them. I mean, do you display them, or you have them all in portfolios?
No, they're still in the portfolios. I just love going through them.
But you do go through them.
I go through it. Like, I try to do it like once a month or so. I just crack them open, and I just go page by page. It's still a great feeling, but I'm also not stupid. So if someone goes and throws an absurd number like he did, I'll be like, all right, it is what it is. But I still have one other page that he wants that I refuse to sell to him. So I have that over Robert Kirkman.
Take that, Kirkman.
No, he's a very funny guy, by the way.
Yeah. Did you converse more with him? Have you kept in touch?
Yeah. So at last year's Comic-Con, he went to see Eric Larson, who was sitting across. So I work at Artist Alley at a friend's table, and Eric Larson was across this, and basically it was right around closing time, and you see Robert Kirkman's got a baseball cap all the way down to his head, and I look at him, and my friend, who's a dealer, he knows him. He goes, go talk to him. I'm like, what? He goes, just go talk to him. So I pull up the comic page, and I'm like, hi, Robert, my name's Phil. I sold you the other page. And before I could take my phone, he grabs my phone. He goes, yes, I'm very interested. And then he looks at me and jokingly goes, yes, maybe I'm interested. Like he tried to play it off. It was really cute. And then I kind of spoke to him a little bit about it. And he goes, well, if you're ever interested, you have my contact details. If you ever want to sell it, you can just get a hold of me. I was like, okay. Shook his hand, walked back. That was it. So it was kind of cool.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. That's really amazing to hear. And yeah, I'm sure, again, like from the spouse's perspective, it's like, it's like, yeah, okay. It's like, all right, there really is something to this. I know you mentioned you gave your wife Ms. Marvel to read. I mean, did she read it? Did she like it? Has she read other comics?
She enjoyed it. So this is the one thing I got her convinced to read was The Killing Joke. I think if you want to get anyone introduced to comics, forget Watchmen, it's too dense. Forget Dark Knight Returns, it's too dense. 48 pages is an absolute masterpiece, Batman the Killing Joke. Because I say two things to them. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it. You never know. I say about the photograph scene, and then I say the last 2 pages. What do you think happened? I actually took a picture of my wife. I gave her the hardcover. She's reading, and I took a picture on the couch, and she's just like so concentrated on reading the pages. And then when she read it, I'm like, so tell me your thoughts. And we would have a discussion for like 2 hours. And I think that's the power of that book.
It's funny because as you were saying, like that's your go-to, like to introduce someone to comics. I was like, I don't know.
No.
But and she enjoyed it. I mean, I assume
Oh,
if you
she
had,
enjoyed it. She really enjoyed it. She goes, "Wow, I didn't think it could be like that." I
what
was
did
like,
she
"Yeah."
think? What did she think happened at the end?
Should we just talk about it? I guess
I mean,
instead
it's
of
been
the
out for
spoiler time.
decades. I think it's all right.
Yeah, why not? She thinks he killed her.
Yeah.
I killed that Joker. Batman killed Joker, and I was like, I don't know. I just feel like he just went insane at that point. But she was like, no, I think he killed her, killed the Joker. And then I asked him about the photo scene. I was like, do you think that Joker is actually crazy enough to rape Barbara Gordon? And that one is still a toss up. It's like, I don't know. I personally do not think so. But then, we actually, I was talking to someone and they actually got really upset at even the notion, because in their mind, they never even thought about that. And they're like, no, that's not possible. What are you talking about? I was like, okay, never mind. Touch the touchy subject. But definitely the ending is the one thing that I didn't even think about. When I read it, I always think that, he just went crazy. Batman basically realized he's as crazy as the Joker. But my wife straight up believes that Batman killed the Joker.
Yeah, so like we might be blowing some people's minds here, but yes, there is an interpretation of the ending of Killing Joke that Batman kills the Joker. That's why the laughter stops. And in those final panels, you see Batman reach up and put his hands, around Joker's neck, and then the laughter just kind of stops as we pull out. And did you listen to Grant Morrison on Kevin Smith's podcast where he went through this?
Yes, I did. And I don't know if he was trolling or not. So
no, I think he was genuine, and that was, this was years ago now, but yeah, Grant Morrison was on Kevin Smith's podcast, and he was talking about as so matter of fact about it as possible. He was like, well, he kills him at the end of it, and Kevin Smith apparently had never thought about it that way, and he was like, what are you talking about? He goes, I won't do a Morrison accent, but I want to, but I won't. But he's like, it's the killing. All right, I'll do it. It's the killing joke. Like it's that's the killing joke that he kills the Joker, and it really is kind of mind blowing. Now, look, yes, we can get technical here, and it's like, well, obviously, Joker has continued to appear in comics published by DC, but as far as like Moore's intent with the book, I think that's a pretty spot on interpretation, and I think that makes it. Does it not make it vastly more interesting than they laugh and it just stops?
Right. And just the fact of, and you can even do an entire book club on this book at this point, because it's like, if you think really hard about it, is that the Joker was just this mediocre guy and he just had one really bad day. And that's what created this monster. That just brings it just brings goosebumps to me just to think about that's what triggered this insanity. So if you tell that to someone and they to read this book, they get so engaged by it. And I strongly believe that if you ever want to get someone into comics, because people always have this thing about comic books being childish, right? So it's like you want to read something a little bit more adult and Batman related, because Adam West or something is something that they would remember. It's like, you know what? Read this book and you'll understand the complexity. So, plus, in my opinion, Gordon was a real hero in that book, but that's another subject.
Yeah. Did you read Three Jokers?
No, that's the one book I have to pick up. I know that Fabok's art on that is just absurd, so I have to check that out.
Yeah, the art is phenomenal, and it was interesting. I'm still kind of thinking it over, but it was good, and definitely as a fan of Killing Joke, I think you really do need to read this. It's weird. Like Jeff Johns is in this phase I never would have expected for him, where he's following up the work of Alan Moore with Doomsday Clock and now Three Jokers. It's like, yeah, all right. But you really should check it out. I do recommend it.
How was Doomsday Clock, by the way, if you read it?
I loved it, actually.
Really? Okay, I need to.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, your mileage on it may vary depending on how much affinity you have for Alan Moore and for the original Watchmen. Because I know there's a whole camp of fans who are like, this is sacrilege. Like, how could anyone else do anything Watchmen? And it's like, if you feel that way, it's like, well, all right, that's probably not for you. But I liked it a lot, way more than I thought I did. Because again, I very much. Like, I enjoyed when I read Watchmen, but it's not something that I go back to all the time. And it's something that I admire and I appreciate and I respect it. Like, I respect what it did for comics more so than I'm like, I really had a great time reading that. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So I went into this and I was like, okay, I could take it or leave it. And I really liked it. And again, I won't spoil it because that is pretty recent and you haven't read it. But in terms of how it sort of pays off what Jeff Johns set up in DC Rebirth, and especially Superman's role in it as the Superman fan. I liked it a lot. I thought it was very satisfying, and I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. So
great.
yeah, I do recommend it. So
Nice.
maybe the opposite of to kind of bring this full circle and sort of to go the opposite route of Alan Moore and Killing Joke and all that stuff, like Archie comics. So how was it that Archie was the way? Like, how did you come to Archie comics? Because I know you said that's how you learned English when you came to America. Like, how old were you, and how did those comics enter the picture?
Well, it was back in Pakistan that I actually learned to read them. Yeah, so like I was 6 or 7. My mother had one rule. When it came to learning, there was no budget. So like actually being able to read comics to her was fine because I was reading English. So I still remember I learned the word Olympics through Archie comics. And I would say the word and I couldn't figure it out. It was Olympics. I couldn't figure Olympics. What the hell does this word mean? And then I would watch television and the Olympics would come up and I would see those exact words. And I was like, oh, that's what that is. So like I still remember like just being able to read and this fondness and the smell of the newsprint. I mean that's still something that's most brings back memories of AR all the time. So it was from growing up in Pakistan that's how I started reading. And then there was something called New Little Archies, which I believe Mark Waid wrote a few of those. Mike Pellerito, he gave me a whole lecture on this one, so I was very excited. Mike Pellerito is the president of Archie Comics, just an FYI.
Yes.
And so like I started just reading those books, and I would learn new words. Like I learned lawsuit because Reggie wanted to sue Archie for something, and it says sue him, and I'm like, what the hell does sue mean? And then I would find out that it means what it means. So it was just this I had the pictures, I had the words, and then I would reference them together, and like this is how words and pictures kind of came into my life, is because of that. So it's it was amazing. I had so many books, like, and literally like Archie always has that place in my mind, in my heart. So as I said, when you talked about Riverdale, I was like, no, close that door. I don't want to know. So yeah, that's pretty much, that's what it was.
That's no, that's really, really cool. I mean, I know you obviously you have affinity for the characters. It's like, well, I know you did already try Riverdale, but I mean, I think if you end up giving it another shot at some point and just kind of keeping in mind like this is a different interpretation for a different medium, there might still be stuff that you can enjoy. Again, it's easy for me to say that because I've not read the comics. I don't have that connection. So I don't, I'm not offended when Archie's banging his teacher because I don't have like a preconceived notion really of the character beyond like a very, very surface level. Do you still follow the comics? Because they did such interesting stuff in recent years from what I've heard.
Well, I mean, I did the Life with Archie thing and that was really, really great. But I did go off a little bit. Occasionally if I'm at like a small little bookstore or something, I might just pick it up. It's just something to read just on the bedstand. So, because it's just the classic stuff, right? It's just I haven't read the new stuff recently, but I mean I heard it's a pretty good direction that they've been gone at. Like the zombie stuff and Adam Hughes did some stuff with them. So no, I haven't picked up the new stuff, but it's just that affinity, right? The digest. That's just that memory. You always chase that memory. So maybe I'll give it a go. You never know.
Yeah. Listen, this really, it's been great to catch up. So let's sum up here. So, still interested in comics, primarily through book club, reading digitally, which is a shift. You've cut the cord as far as cable, still happily married. How many years is it now?
We celebrated 5 years, July 25th. So
5. Well, congratulations. Thank you. It goes so fast.
It goes very fast. Yeah. I mean, we actually did a lot of traveling last year. We traveled to Europe a few times. So the lockdown has been a little bit like of a 180 in terms of experience, but we got each other. So that's all that matters. So.
Yes. Yeah, no, for sure. And now I know you said with New Year's did you physically go into the office or are you working remotely these days?
Oh, I haven't stepped foot since February. So it's been wild. The markets have been kind of crazy. I don't even know why I go into the office anymore. It kind of destroys the whole purpose. Like the whole structure of going into an office makes no sense at this point. But who am I to say that?
That's the thing though. Like, obviously this has been a terrible situation in so many ways for so many people, but trying to look on the positive side as much as we can. And it's like, I previously never did remote podcasts because I like the in-person, and I still prefer, it's better in person. You get a more organic conversation that, the sound is better, all that stuff. But it's like, this opens it up now. And maybe now there's someone who I just would never have just due to geography, would never be able to have on the show. But it's like now, we have the capability to do it. Now I'm doing video podcasts, which hopefully will help me broaden my audience. So it's like, and as far as like work, I'm the same as you. Like, I haven't been into the office since March, and I always felt that, with the exception of our like in-person events, because I'm in admissions and we do events, but like with the exception of that, like I've always felt like I could do this from home. Like we have the technology. It's like there's nothing I can't do from home, and like now I proved it.
Yeah, I mean, I've done more complex work at home than I ever did in my office. It's just like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Our company's been doing, we had a good year. Everyone was working from home. You didn't need anyone in an office. I saved tons of money on Metro North. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Defeats the purpose of the whole office model. But,
Well, we'll see how things change moving forward. And so I know you said, you had the contact with Odo, and I know you do the book club. Do you keep in touch with anyone else from the store in any way?
Occasionally I would ping Drew a couple of times. If I see an Infinity Gauntlet original page, I'm like, is this yours? Because he was definitely the custodian. He goes, yes, no, sold it 5 years ago, sold it for too little. Now it's worth this much. Why did I do that? So yeah, I mean, we have a little bit of banter back and forth. So it's kind of cool. I still try to keep in touch with a few people here and there. If anything Superman related comes up, I try to ping you always.
Yeah, you have, and I really do appreciate that. I think this will do it for us. We've been chatting for an hour and 15 minutes here, and we've covered a lot, and it's been great to catch up. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
Yeah, what are your thoughts on Bendis' Superman? I actually wanted to check with you on that. What were your thoughts?
I haven't read it.
Oh no!
Well, let me. I read Man of Steel. I read his miniseries.
Okay.
That kicked everything off, and I enjoyed it. It was funny because I thought it was like pretty. I don't want to say standard, but like it wasn't so like out of the box. Like it didn't feel like, oh my god, like Bendis is here. Like it's completely different. Like it, it felt like a pretty traditional Superman story. I haven't followed it, but I know, I know certainly like the major one of the major developments of the run. Have you read it?
No, but I do know that main one about his identity. Okay,
right. Well, no, I mean, I think this it's out there.
He had an interesting take on the identity. He says because nowadays in social media, having a secret identity means something negative. So it's like, I'm showing the world now, this is who I am, so that there's transparency. So I thought it was an interesting way to look at it. I haven't read it, but I just saw that interview. So I was like, maybe it is something. I own the original page of the first Superman 1, page 1. So that's literally the only reason I have anything that's Superman related. So
yeah, it's on my list, and we'll cover it on Digging for Kryptonite. So I will get to it. But yeah, I'm curious to read it. As far as the whole revealing the identity, I have objections to it, but I'm open-minded, and I'm willing, if it's a good story and it's well told. And we've not seen, because there have been other stories. I mean, most recently in the New 52, where his identity was exposed, but it was exposed, and things got very violent very quickly. Like this was different. Like he made the choice, and he approached people like it was approached in a different way, and I think that would be. I think it would be interesting to read. I guess, I have specific thoughts on the secret identity. And so the idea of them, kind of taking that away, like I said, I'm not the biggest fan, but I will give it a read.
Right.
But I haven't followed it. So I don't really have much to say beyond that.
Fair enough. Okay. Yeah. Let me know how it is. I'll follow your lead. I'll follow your recommendation.
Well, listen, thanks so much for doing this. I hope you and your wife stay safe, stay healthy.
Likewise.
And thank you very much. And maybe we'll do a book club podcast episode down the line.
I'd be honored.
It would be great to do something with you. And once we're past this pandemic and we're all vaccinated and we're back out in the world again, hopefully we'll have a big AR gathering, and hope you'll be able to make it.
Yes, absolutely. Will do. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. This has been great. So thank you again, Phil. Thank you to everyone for listening. We will be back next month with Valentine's Day featuring Drew Cheskin.
Oh, great. Awesome.
My Valentine. It's at the end of the last episode, I mentioned that Doug Desher was going to be the guest for New Year's. I initially had you earmarked for a later holiday, but scheduling just didn't work out. And I said, you know what? Like, I happened to be reaching out to you to set up, and I was like, let's just do this now. And so thank you for stepping in and being part of this New Year's episode.
No problem. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. So we will be back next month with our Valentine's Day installment. And until then, don't be a flat squirrel. My Comic Shop History is a Flat Squirrel production. Art by Philtastic Phil Menza. Music by Basic Printer. If you like what you heard, be sure to listen to Digging for Kryptonite, available on most major podcast platforms. Sign up for exclusive content at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato and watch My Comic Shop Country, out now on Apple TV and Amazon.